I'm Lindsay Smith with Real Agriculture and Real Ag Radio, and joining me now is Rick White. He's the president and CEO of the Canadian Canola Growers Association. Welcome here, Rick.
Oh, thank you, Lindsay. Great to be on.
All right. We've had better weeks. Let's put it that way, and maybe better months. But late last week, we did get news that China had placed 100% tariff on canola meal and canola oil coming out of Canada into China. And the canola growers, of course, are part of a group of producer groups asking for compensation on this. Let's back up though and start with just how impactful a tariff of this magnitude will be or is now on the canola industry.
Right. Well, I mean, for now it's confined to canola oil and canola meal. The good part of that is that it is a smaller piece of our export program. The much larger piece is canola seed going into China. So the 100% tariffs on oil and meal are retaliatory, clearly retaliatory on behalf of China in response to Canada's imposition of 100% EV tariffs, I should say, and Canada's imposition of 25% on steel and aluminum. So this is a very clear and direct response from China regarding the Canadian initiation of that. The Canadian government was working lockstep with the U.S. and so followed along with them as a partner in this to stand with the U.S. Of course, that's not working out very well for us now because now we have retribution from China and the U.S. is causing problems or about to be causing problems with trade. So in terms of the impact, right now it's bad, or it could be, but the real issue will be when they do the anti-dumping investigation and finalize that to determine if there is seed tariffs on seed, which we believe are completely unjustified because we put in the data and responded to the Chinese MOFCOM investigation into anti-dumping, and we gave all the farmer data that we could find showing that they were selling not below market, and there is no evidence, but that I don't think we can rest on that. And so the real question is what would the 25% tariff mean on $5 billion worth of seed. And again, I'm not even sure it's going to be 25%, Lindsay, because in the Australian case, when they went after barley, China, the same way, they ended up with a barley tariff of, I think it was 83 or 85%. So we don't know what to expect on the seed side. That is yet to come. But that would be devastating to the canola industry and the market economics. I cannot imagine that it would work with that kind of a tariff level in. But we'll have to wait and see, unfortunately, and we'll find out more. China's in a position to respond through their investigation with a preliminary tariff right now, but they haven't done that yet. So right now we're kind of holding our breath.
So could this then be an opportunity? I mean, this tariff is supposed to go into place March 20th, as you mentioned. It's not currently levied against seed, only oil and meal. Is this an opportunity to negotiate?
Well, that's my view on it, and in fact, I've actually said that on a number of calls that there have been with the government, between the government and the industry. Now is the time for Canada, now that it is clearly retaliatory with oil and meal, and yet to come on seed. Now is the time for Canada to open it up with China and put on the table the 100% EV tariffs and everything else that triggered this, because this is triggered by Canada. They need to put that in a negotiating window now and say, let's talk about this. And for heaven's sake, they need to negotiate this away. So we don't have to fight a trade war with two superpowers at the same time, which is what this is lining up to be. And we can't win that fight. We can't win one of them, leave alone two of them at the same time. So let's get rid of. I think the China one is debatable and negotiable, and Canada needs to stand up and undo what was done to try to get China to back down.
And as you mentioned, we are linking this, of course, to Canada levying that 100% tariff on EVs out of China. And you're right. I mean, this was done in solidarity with our U.S. counterparts. And I think understatement that that's not working out so great, Rick. I'll be honest. Yeah. So, I mean, but that does, I suppose, put Canada in a position, if I'm understanding it correctly, that, we could be negotiating and perhaps that 100% tariff is part of that negotiation and could be removed. So now, before we talk a bit about the compensation side, as you mentioned, this is meal and oil, so could still see movement tariff free of seed. Is this a bigger concern for our domestic crush capacity or our domestic crushers versus farmers, or how does that all shake out?
Well, given it's predominantly seed, it's less about the crushers. I can't say that for the U.S. market, though, because that's mostly oil and meal, which is crusher value added going into the U.S., but that's a different story. But on this one here, with it would be unfortunate to have oil and meal have that 100% tariff on. But again, I think it's all about the seed and how China is going to treat that, because that is the bread and butter and that is the bulk of the movement. And on a principle basis, those tariffs are not justified even in what they did. So the real issue with the Canadian crushers really is the American market is a really big threat.
And we probably have to schedule a whole other call to talk about the biofuel, renewable fuel, all that side also. So we're going to stay focused on this Chinese issue for now. Last question then, I guess. So we are hearing certainly a lot from producer groups on this tariff from China, because of course it impacts, yes, canola, but also seafood, pork. There's several different commodities impacted by this. What do you think? Or what is sort of what you're discussing with government, et cetera? What do you think is what compensation could look like or should look like if the government chooses to go that way and doesn't negotiate this way?
Right. So it's hard to determine what amount at this point in time. We're still waiting for the determination on the seed, which is a very big chunk. And we had sent a letter to the federal government when China initially launched their anti-dumping investigation, and we quickly put the government of Canada on notice as a canola industry, us included, that compensation should tariffs be implemented by China, that the Canadian government needs to be ready to find a way to compensate farmers for commensurate with the losses that will be incurred, yet to be determined, and it's still yet to be determined yet. We estimated in a study that we had done that the farm gate impact could be anywhere from a $2 bushel to $5 bushel amount. It could be within the range of about $1.7 billion to $3.5 billion lost at the farm gate level. So those are the parameters that we put out there, kind of what the impact could be on farmers. And that was a third-party research that we had done. At the end of the day, it'll depend where the tariff level is set, if indeed it is set. That will determine how much money farmers will need to be compensated, because it is something that is out of their control. And again, how long is this going to last? Is it going to last a short term or is it long term? Right now, the government is offering loan products in various forms. You've seen that. And that would impact or help, in their view, guard against both China and and the US problem that we have. But like, and I've said this publicly, farmers should not be expected to borrow their way through these problems that are looming. China, nor with the US. They're going to need a cash injection. They're going to need support with cash, not increasing their debt. And it doesn't matter if it's interest free or low interest or more availability, it's all debt that needs to be paid back at the end of the day. And so we're asking for the government to be ready to compensate farmers commensurate with the losses that the farmers will likely incur. What's the mechanism? I don't know, but it will be a challenge. But at the same time, something needs to be done. We have to look after farmers because when they do well, the rural communities do well, the rest of the industry will do okay as well. But you got to look after the farmers and make sure that they're financially and economically able to make it through some significant problems that are brewing on the trade front.
How might we are still currently prorogued in Parliament? We have a new leader. We have a Prime Minister designate that may be Prime Minister within days, but we may also then be in an election. How does the state of where the Canadian government is at sort of leave all this?
It's very problematic because, well, they have a new prime minister likely for a fairly short period of time, and then they go into likely calling an election pretty quickly, I'm assuming. But as soon as the election is called, it's in caretaker mode, and there's not going to be any new money for anybody until the election is done. So unfortunately, we got a period of time of waiting before anything can be done. But hopefully, whoever the government is after the election, we will be there in their face fighting for farmers too, because by then it'll be several months down the road. And this will all be clear. What happens in China, possibly we'll know more by then. Hopefully not before then. But at the same time, then we know what we're asking for. Then we know what to expect, and then we know what the problem is, and then we can deal with it with the federal government. But they're going to have to come up with a way to compensate farmers somehow. This action from China in particular was triggered by Canada's action to begin with. So we feel strongly that the federal government needs to help farmers out in this time, given that it's retaliatory reaction to another government policy.
All right, Rick, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks, Lindsay.